Swadhyaya is a niyama which means self-study. And it can be interpreted as meaning personal study of spiritual texts, and especially refers traditionally to scriptures like the Bhagavad Gita or the Ramayana or the Upanishads or the Yoga Sutra, etc. It can also be interpreted as referring to study of oneself in terms of mindfulness and being aware of your body, your mind, your sensations of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensations. And Ishvara Pranidhana is the fifth niyama, which means surrender to Ishvara. So this is a form of devotional practice that Patanjali introduces in contrast to the atheistic Sankhya system, or non-theistic. And in Patanjali's view, Ishvara is a special Purusha who has never been entangled in Prakriti, who has been eternally free, and who we can surrender to in times of crisis and in spiritual practice in order to facilitate this surrender to consciousness. So that's the yamas and niyamas. And the third limb of Ashtanga Yoga is asana. Asana often is used nowadays to mean different yoga postures, but in its original usage, asana literally means seat or throne and referred almost exclusively to meditation postures. Patanjali actually did not write very much about asana, but he did say Sthira Sukham Asanam. That's the Yoga Sutra 246, which means your seat should be steady and comfortable. So there are different postures that we can take while we're meditating, and different postures have different effects on the physical and subtle body, so they can channel energy in different ways. But really the most important thing is that you are comfortable and able to sit still for an extended period of time. So we can go through these different postures, and you can try some of them out yourself and see how it feels. And through practice over time, your body can begin to adjust and become accustomed to sitting in a particular posture for longer and longer periods. In addition, if you also practice Hatha Yoga, then the different poses and exercises in Hatha Yoga can train your body to remain in more difficult meditation postures for longer periods of time, comfortably. So we're just going to cover a few different meditation postures that can be applied by anybody as long as you are comfortable in the posture. So the first meditation posture is called Maitriyasana, which means friendship pose. This is a posture that's done with a chair. I would demonstrate it, but I don't have a chair with me at the moment. Sit a little bit forward on the chair, sit up nice and tall, and rest your hands comfortably on your thighs. Your feet should be underneath your knees, and your toes should be visible. The second meditation posture is called Sukhasana, which means easy pose. Sukhasana is simply sitting cross-legged. And again, you're sitting up nice and tall, reaching through the crown. You should, if you're sitting on a low seat, such as in Sukhasana or any of the poses that follow, you should ideally have a meditation cushion, such as this, that enables you to sit so that your hips are higher than your knees. And this will help to protect your joints and enable you to sit for years on end without causing serious damage to your joints. So in Sukhasana, you can have one leg in front. You can practice switching them and see how that feels. And this posture, the crossing of the legs creates an energetic seal. so that the prana in the body tends to flow upward more easily. If this becomes uncomfortable on your ankles, for example, you can also simply place the leg in front on the outside of the other leg so that you are not putting any weight on your ankles at all. So another meditation posture is called Swastikasana, which means auspicious pose. So in Swastikasana, we take one foot and place it in the crook of the knee on the other leg. And then we place the other foot on top, also in the crook of the knee. Only sit in this posture if you can sit in it with both knees on the ground while you're sitting on a meditation cushion. Because some people attempt to sit in this pose before they had the flexibility to get both of their knees on the ground, and that's actually not very safe for the hips. So with this posture and all the other postures that I'm about to show you following this one, make sure that your knees are on the ground. And if you cannot sit with your knees on the ground comfortably for a long period of time, then Sukhasana or Maitriyasana may be more appropriate for you. And if you're in generally good health, you may be able over time to practice Hatha Yoga or what have you in order to increase flexibility and gradually move into other postures if that is an interest of yours. A pose that is very similar to Swastikasana is called Ardha Padmasana, which means half lotus. And in this posture, the foot that is underneath is still in the crook of the knee, but the foot that is in front is placed on the opposite thigh instead. And the ankle is kind of pressed up against the pelvis. Similar to this one is called Siddhasana, which means accomplished pose. And for Siddhasana, the foot that is underneath is placed so that the heel is pressed against the perineum between the genitals and the anus. So this is like having a constant mula bandha or root lock during your meditation practice that helps to stimulate the Kundalini Shakti, the energy of consciousness that resides in the root chakra, so that the energy is flowing upwards more easily. And this posture is my preferred posture for meditation, generally speaking, but it took me several years of daily practice in Hatha Yoga and meditation in order to get comfortable enough to sit like this for long periods of time. The last meditation posture that I'm going to show you is Padmasana, which is lotus posture. Lotus posture just involves placing both feet on top of the opposite thigh. And I actually use this particular posture more often in Hatha Yoga for certain bandhas or mudras, but some people like it for meditation as well, especially people who are extremely flexible. But it is pretty rare to find somebody who is comfortable sitting in this position for a very long period of time. So that's asana. The fourth limb of Ashtanga Yoga is pranayama, which means lengthening of the breath, basically. So it's prana and ayama. Prana meaning breath or vital energy, and ayama meaning lengthening and expanding. So there are more complex forms of pranayama that are taught in Hatha Yoga, but that came many centuries after Ashtanga Yoga. In Ashtanga Yoga and in the Yoga Sutra, there is only really very simple forms of breathing practice that are taught. And these involve, again, lengthening and expanding the inhale and the exhale, and optionally also expanding the pause between the inhale and the exhale, as well as the pause between the exhale and the inhale. But really for this, we just are trying to lengthen and deepen the breath and feel the abdomen expand with the inhale and relax with the exhale. And by lengthening and deepening the breath, the mind becomes more steady and calm and focused. And the innate light of awareness is able to more clearly shine through. The fifth limb of Ashtanga Yoga is called Pratyahara, which means the withdrawal of the senses. So I typically explain this as resting the senses, where through systematic relaxation, we can cause the senses to temporarily become inactive and to stop focusing on external objects so that our awareness can focus inward instead. So there are different practices where, for example, scanning the body and relaxing all of the muscles, that practice is helping us to relax the senses so that we can more easily focus on internal meditation. And eventually, with practice in Pratyahara, we can totally withdraw the senses, almost like being in a sensory deprivation tank, and become aware of our internal reality completely without being distracted at all by anything outside of us. And again, this is not necessarily something that we need to do all the time, every day. In fact, it makes it impossible to carry out our daily lives if we are not aware of our surroundings. But for the purposes of meditation, it can be extremely helpful to be able to focus inward for a time period and to become more aware of our internal reality. The sixth, seventh, and eighth limbs of yoga are all different aspects of meditation. Together, they're called samyama. The sixth limb is dharana, which means focus on a meditative object. So when we meditate, there is some kind of object usually that we are focusing on, like the breath or a mantra or a candle flame or a yantra. There are a lot of different things that we can meditate on, but whatever we're focusing on, that is our alambana, our resting place. And our mind gets distracted quite frequently, or our minds get distracted by external objects and thoughts and things of that nature. And by continually bringing the mind back to its resting place, we cultivate this ability to focus for extended periods of time. When we begin to meditate, oftentimes, for most of us, myself included, there is a very strong tendency for the mind to go from object to object to object and to get distracted very easily, and that's totally okay. It's just part of the process of learning to meditate. And with practice consistently over a long period of time with true devotion, we can learn to cultivate this focus. And when we are able to focus consistently on a particular object, then dharana becomes dhyana, which is the seventh limb of Ashtanga Yoga. Dhyana literally means meditation. That's how it's often translated. And this is a stage of meditative focus where the mind flows continuously towards an object. So many people have had an experience of getting so absorbed in a particular activity that they don't hear or see somebody around them, and are very surprised when all of a sudden they come into their field of awareness and their senses are able to detect that person or that thing again. So that's very similar to what happens in dhyana, except that in dhyana we're not necessarily engaged in a particular activity, but we're focusing on one thing, and the mind becomes like a stream continuously flowing towards the object of meditation. When the mind flows continuously towards a particular object for an extended period of time, I've heard 12 minutes is a pretty standard amount, then we begin to go into the eighth limb of yoga, which is samadhi, which is meditative absorption. Samadhi is a state of consciousness that is characterized by profound clarity and bliss and a sense of unity. And there are different stages and forms of samadhi. But there are two basic forms that I'm going to tell you about right here, where one is sabija samadhi, which means samadhi with seeds, and there's nirbija samadhi, which is samadhi without seeds. Sabija samadhi is a state of meditative absorption in which these samskaras, these subtle impressions in the causal body, are temporarily inactive. So they are no longer projecting into experiences of a finite world or a particular mortal identity. And there are different stages of Sabija Samadhi. So there are different levels of deepening awareness. But those seeds are temporarily inactive, but they're still present. They aren't completely gone. And therefore, when you come out of meditation, even if you've got into this very deep state of bliss and union, your karmic patterns begin to reassert themselves. And so that it's not complete total liberation at this point. It's a stage on the path. And then over time, with a lot of practice, the practice of samadhi can deepen to such a degree that these karmic impressions, these samskaras, can be completely eliminated from the causal body. And when that happens, we can enter into what's called nirbija samadhi, which is total and complete liberation. And in the system of Ashtanga Yoga, that is the final goal. But as we will see in the section of Tantra later in the course, this Nirbija Samadhi or Nirvikalpa Samadhi is seen as a step on the path. It's just another stage that leads to a spiritual rebirth so that we can be fully embodied and still have access to this universal consciousness in every moment, here and now. Om.